Okay, so let's get started. Few people came to me and said that, hey, you know what, you're doing some Terraform and Ansible stuff. I'm interested too. So figured this is a good way of sharing what I do on a not really on a day-to-day basis, but a lot. Some disclaimers though. So I've not really used Terraform a lot, not to the extent that I'm very proficient in it, but I'm okay. As for Ansible, I've used it like a couple of times, so very, very new to Ansible. So it's expected that I will do a lot of mistakes. And you can see from the layout, I have my terminal open, I have a browser here because I'm going to be using the documentation a lot. Um, so if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm monitoring them here and I'll try to pay attention to and answer any of your questions if you have. Feel free to interrupt me or tell me what I'm doing wrong, right, what I'm doing wrong. So, why am I doing this? So, a lot of you may or may not know, but I'm one of the organizers of this fantastic event called Barcamp Bangalore. So, Barcamp is an event which goes way, way back, and we've been running it in Bangalore for a long time now. And last year's event was we had to cancel it because we didn't have enough interest. So this year we're planning to do it again. And yeah, as Javin mentioned, make sure you have a Twitch account to chat. I don't know if there's a way to enable guest chats, but whatever. So the idea is that now Barcamp has been running on its own DigitalOcean Droplet, and I have been running and maintaining it. Now I have a DigitalOcean Droplet as well, but the thing is that droplet is pretty much lying idle because so most of my websites, which is these, and I moved these both of these my personal blog, which is Satya Bhatt, or aka My World, as well as satyasays.com. Both used to be on WordPress. Now I've moved it out of WordPress, and they are running on Netlify. Uh, and they are powered with Hugo. Hugo is a static site generator. You can get into Hugo probably at a later stream if required, but the gist is that I have no longer a need for WordPress and PHP and MySQL and all that stuff on my DigitalOcean Droplet. Now I also have some free credits due to referrals, and uh, you know I figured, hey, instead of letting the droplets be idle and paying for the Barcamp one, might as well move the Barcamp droplet over to my account. And the other reason is that the droplet in my account is very old. I mean, the it's still running on Ubuntu 14.04, which is pretty much out of has reached end of life last year. Yeah, 2019 last year, and I'm having trouble updating it with security updates and whatnot. So I figured let's build a new one and let's show you how it's done as well. Right. So what are we going to do? So we're going to use two tools mainly. One is Terraform and one is Ansible. Now Terraform, we'll get to the explanations of what each tool does in a bit, uh, but what we're going to do is we're going to use Terraform to spin up a new droplet, and we're going to use Ansible to provision all of this stuff. I Hey Vibhas, thanks for joining. And Control Plus. So I hope this is a bit easier to read now, though it's going to make my programming a lot difficult. So I'm gonna just to recap what I was saying. The reason that I'm doing this is because some people came and asked me, said, if you're going to do some Terraform stuff, do stream it. They'll be interested. So that's what I'm going to do. In addition, I want to move. My account is lying idle, and the account on Barcamp is, well, I'm paying for it. I want to move the droplet over to my account, but my the droplet on my account is very old. It's an Ubuntu 14.04 LTS system, so I want to rebuild it. And hey, Slapbot, thanks for joining in. And I want to rebuild it, and I figured might as well stream it while I'm doing it. And like I said, disclaimers, I've used Terraform a little bit, not that confident, and Ansible, I'm very new to it. I'm very much a hardcore chef person. So hopefully I won't be making too many mistakes, but I know I will be making mistakes. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment in the Twitch chat. I'll try to answer them when possible. And if I'm doing something right, wrong, let me know. And full disclosure, this is going to be very simple, straightforward stuff. No complicated production ready, security hardened stuff. This is just going to be a demonstration. You can use this as inspiration to make it more production ready, make it streamlined and hard coded, less hard coded rather. And I'm going to be eating some stuff, so please excuse me. So Terraform is a tool from HashiCorp. It's called terraform.io, right? Right on. So it's an infrastructure as code tool to provision and manage any cloud infrastructure service. So what does that mean? So instead of having to go to your DigitalOcean web portal and do click, what you can do is you can write a little bit of code and you can run Terraform, and what it'll do is it'll read the Terraform code that you've written and it will provision the infrastructure to whatever it needs. Now you might say that that takes longer than creating it. Let's say writing code takes way too long. It's easier for me to use a DigitalOcean control panel. That's true if you're doing it for one or maybe twice, but if you're going to be doing it multiple times, if you have lots of machines, it's a lot easier and more streamlined and a lot simpler to just build it in code. And in general, you get repeatability and you can do a lot more things. You don't have to click over 50 times if you're doing 50 VMs, and it's uh, upgrades and making it easier. Also, naming conventions comes into the picture. Now, if you're going to be naming it manually, in once you'll write web server 1, in other places you'll just write web 1. So if you're having it in code, the code is a source of truth. You know what to look for if you want to change something. The other piece that I'm going to be using is called Ansible. Ansible is like the Swiss Army knife of automation. It's got anything and everything. It comes with a lot of modules. Uh, we're not going to be using any of these. So what we're going to be using is the Ansible modules. So I'm going to be sticking to the Ansible module index. So Ansible is very modular, so it lets you do a lot of things. You can see, for example, if you want to do, let's say, copy a file, you can use the files module and copy it over. And yeah, I mean, theoretically, you can also, if I'm not wrong, there are modules for Ansible to build DigitalOcean droplets itself. But for now, let's just keep it simple and straightforward. So how is Terraform different from CloudFormation? Terraform is designed, and the goal of Terraform is to support multiple cloud providers. CloudFormation is only directed towards AWS. It's as simple as that. Uh, I have a beef when people say Terraform makes multi-cloud easy. I don't really believe that, because even as you'll see, even when you're writing the code for Terraform, you are still tailoring it to a specific provider. So it becomes, if you have a lot of different cloud providers, for example, AWS, Azure, DigitalOcean, Google Cloud, you still have to write very provider specific code. So it's not really true multi-cloud panacea as a lot of people say it's going to be. In the interest of making a stream a little bit easier to follow and not having to get muddled with a lot of infrastructure prerequisites, what I've done is I already installed Terraform. So you can see Terraform is already installed. I've also installed Ansible, and oopsie, bad. Oh. Apparently, I did not set up the DigitalOcean token. Whoopsie. Just give me a moment. I'm gonna have to blank out while I post in some secrets. I need a shortcut for this one. So it's good that I did check for the DigitalOcean credentials are working or not, otherwise we'd be banging our heads quite a bit. So while I figure out this, yes, so so what I'm doing here is I'm just making a quick curl call to the DigitalOcean API to confirm that I can talk to it and my auth credentials are proper. And you can see it tosses out a big YAML or rather big JSON, which means everything is working fine. Yep, so we're all good. So let's just get started with Terraform first. So these are our goals. First we need to get the new VM provisioned. So let's dig into DigitalOcean. So you can see I already have a droplet. This is my old droplet. I intend to dismantle this soon within the next couple of days. So what I'm going to do is we're going to start writing the code for deploying this droplet. So now what do we need for deploying the code for this new droplet? So before we get to that, let's talk about some Terraform specific terminologies. Terraform deals with what we call as providers, variables, I can't type, outputs. So at the simplest level, these are what Terraform, these are the basic constructs of Terraform. You have providers, you have variables, and of course, I completely forgot to mention a most important thing, which is resources. So providers, now Terraform needs to know what cloud provider to talk to. That's where providers come in. So providers gives an abstracted view of what providers are available. Now Terraform supports a lot of providers. So if you see all providers, these are well, so these are a lot of the providers which Terraform supports. Sorry. I've used the AWS provider a little bit, but not the DigitalOcean one. I did a simple sample check yesterday to ensure I was doing it right, and it went okay. So yeah, and there are a lot more community providers. Variables are basically variables you provide. So what you can do with Terraform is that you can provide a generic template, and you can use variables to provide input either via the command line or as environment variables. Resources are the building blocks. You use resources to build and construct basically whatever you want. Be droplets in terms of DigitalOcean resources. We have droplets. So these are let's not get into data sources for now. So you can see these are all the providers that are these are all the resources that DigitalOcean provider exposes. You have CDNs, certificates. DigitalOcean has managed databases. Droplets is what we are interested at. Firewalls, floating IPs, etc., etc. And so our focus is going to be on droplets and output. So once you run Terraform, Terraform does some calculations and it tells you that this is what you can expect, and after you've completely run through it, it will give you an output in terms of IDs or resource providers or whatnot. Okay, so and the way Terraform works is Terraform has a couple of commands, more than a couple actually. So, but the ones that we are interested in are Terraform apply, Terraform format, Terraform validate, and of course Terraform init. What are these? So when you write and when you write a Terraform file, Terraform does not know how to proceed with it. So when you say Terraform init, what it will do is it will look at the file, it will look at the providers block specifically, and it will see that, okay, you're talking about a DigitalOcean provider, so that is what I want. So I'm going to install and I'm going to download and install the Terraform DigitalOcean plugin, provider plugin, so that I can talk to DigitalOcean APIs. You can use validate to validate that the Terraform template that you have written is valid. Terraform does not use any programming language. It has its own custom built-in DSL or domain-specific language called HCL or HashiCorp configuration language, I think. It's something which is common to a lot of the HashiCorp projects, Terraform, Vagrant, Nomad, and of course Packer. Packer is still using JSON, but there are plans to for Packer to switch to HCL, but that's a long-term goal. We can talk about Packer in another stream. Packer is pretty cool. Yeah, someone who's followed us. Let's see. Oh, okay. Anyway, so we use apply to actually. Hey Shiban, thanks for joining in. I'm going to be talking about programming, not game. So just a heads up. So we use apply to actually build the infrastructure. I didn't mention about Terraform plan. So before you build stuff, it would be really nice if you could have a little preview of what's going to happen. So that's where Terraform plan comes in. It will tell you what is going to change, what's going to happen. So I'll explain this all more in a bit once we get these started. So let's start with the DigitalOcean provider. So I'm going to be copy pasting a lot of the example code because I'm not really familiar with DigitalOcean's provider APIs, but you have to make do with it. So some of the providers here, so rather some of the code here, you'll see that I'll be using a different syntax. That's because Terraform recently had a huge update. It went from 0.11 to 0.12. It's still not version 1, but 0.12 had a lot of breaking changes in terms of syntax changes, in terms of the way you refer variables and things like that. So yes. Now you're wondering, why do I need this? It's like I said, you need a provider. So this tells that we're going to be using the DigitalOcean provider, and we are talking about a variable here. So now this is going to fail now. Let's see why. Validate. The configuration is valid, but let's see. Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong file. So here we are, Terraform validate. So you can see here, although I have mentioned provider, but since I did not initialize it, so Terraform does not know what to do with it. So what we are going to do is we're going to run Terraform init. So you can see it is going to start installing the DigitalOcean provider, and yep. Let's see, next Terraform validate. So it says the config is successful. Let's see, Terraform plan. There's nothing to be done here because we're not really used. We're not really said that we're going to be building any resources. So so what I'm going to say here is now the Terraform provider requires a valid API token so that it can authenticate and talk to the DigitalOcean APIs. I don't want to hardcode the API token here because it's a secret and you're not really supposed to hardcode secrets. The way to go about is you use something like environment variables. Now, if you look at the curl example, if you look at the curl example, you can see here I'm referring to this little piece of fancy magic. So, oh, sorry about that. I don't know how that happened. Let me fix that, Vivas. Thanks, Javed. Looks like Nightbot got a bit too eager. $60 seriously? I think I'm going to remove Nightbot for now. Okay. So we were sorry about that. You can post whatever you wanted to post. This little bit of fancy magic is what we're referring to as what I'm doing is I have exported an environment variable called DigitalOcean_token, and I'm going to refer to it by this. So this is how you would refer to environment variables in Bash. Yeah, so the reason why, so like I said, between 0.11 and 0.12, there's been a lot of changes in the way syntax is referred. So you can also use the old style, which is like this, or you can use this new way as well. This is a lot more easier to read and a lot more streamlined, so I prefer this way. So now that, and like I said, what we're going to do here is we're going to provide the API token to this field called token, and the way we're going to do it is Terraform plan minus, actually, yeah, we don't need to do it, right? Just hold on. We have some notes from here. Yeah. In case you're wondering why is the difference between the two shells here, so this is basically running on Windows, and this I'm SSH'd into my Linux VM. I wanted to do it on Windows, but I ran into some difficulty installing Ansible because it was trying to create a symlink, and I think UAC got very eager and was blocking, and I figured let's not get too adventurous and let's just use something which I'm comfortable with. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say Terraform plan minus var do token, which means what I'm saying, what I'm telling Terraform is the variable called do token, which is referenced here, gets its values from this environment variable, which is DigitalOcean_token. So I have that for reference. Let's go back to the documentation. I'm going to create a droplet. Woohoo! Fun times. So what this means is create a new resource of a DigitalOcean Droplet. This resource will be called web. Now, it's important to note that this web references the name of the Terraform resource, not exactly the name of the resource that you're going to create in DigitalOcean itself. So that name is actually referenced here. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to say BCB general. I want an Ubuntu 18.04 x64. Let's just install the latest one, which is 1910, because we have the new LTS coming up in about 3 months anyway. If you're curious how I got these are not very well documented, unfortunately. It just mentions here that we have to use DigitalOcean API to get them, and even in that case, so you can see here, yeah. So this is the API call that you have to do, which is get /v2/images. So v2 images. Do I have JQ installed? I don't. Is JQ there in update? Oh, we do have JQ. So I'm just going to install JQ to make it easier to read the output of the JSON. So I'm not going to build. So you can see here, if you look at the description, it says name DigitalOcean Droplet ID or slug, and the slug we can get from the API call, which is slug. And you can see the slugs are Ubuntu 16.04, x64, x32. We are interested in the 64-bit version of Ubuntu 18.04, so, and we don't want anything else, so we're going to use this. We're going to name our droplet as BCB general. The region is NYC2. No, we want in Bangalore, because most of the people visiting Pakam Bangalore websites are in Bangalore. No shocker. The size S1 VCP 1 GB. This is again a bit obscure, but you have to use, let me close this tab because we don't need it anymore. We will need to use the DigitalOcean APIs and get the sizes. And the one thing oh, you didn't know about JQ? Wow, okay. JQ is a lifesaver, man. It can do some really amazing stuff. So no matches found. I did something wrong. Oh, yeah, JQ lets you fetch JSON just like jQuery. So it's JSON query. So you can use selectors and stuff like that. So it's very, very handy. So in our case, I always get the JQ syntax down. So yeah, I'm doing something wrong. Anyway, let's not focus on this, but experiment with JQ. And there's actually a very nice playground tool called JQ Playground. It lets you experiment with JQ syntaxes. JQ Play. Yeah, use JQ Play. It's very nifty, very handy, especially if you are very unfamiliar with the jQuery syntax. Just copy paste JSON there, experiment with the filters, see what you get. I use JQ sparingly, especially if I have to filter for something in my bash scripts. because the JSONs can change, and if it breaks, and it causes a whole lot of problems. So now that we have a resource which is a DigitalOcean Droplet, we will name this as BCBDO. We have our image, we have the name, we have a region, we have a size. Okay, so that's all there is. We'll get to SSH keys in a bit. Yes, we'll get to that in a bit. I didn't know DigitalOcean supported tags, so here we go. So tags lets you tag a specific instance. So for example, if you're going to be cross-referencing the costs associated with specific stuff, so you can say, hey, find me the tags of the top 5 consumers. So that's how you can say, hey, you're consuming the most resources, or you're costing us the most. Let's see if this works. It's a list of tags to be applied. So if it's a list, it should be like so. I hope. The thing is, I'm using Visual Studio Code, but the VS Code DigitalOcean provider and the Terraform plugin has not yet been completely updated for 0.12. The AWS and I think even the Azure ones have been updated with their LSP support, but not the DigitalOcean provider. So I don't know if this is right or wrong, but we'll know soon enough. How? Because we can say validate and success. Let's see plan. So now if you see here, when I say Terraform plan, if I have a variable, it will ask me for the variable value. You can do more fancy things. So you can say, you can provide a description for this now. Terraform variables. So yeah, you can do things like this. You can specify a type for it, so that there's a little bit of input validation right there. You can provide a default value. So if you don't provide a DO token, that's what it's going to take in as the default value. And you can also provide a description. So let's see what happens now. Okay, so it is obviously buffing out on this. So it has to be like this. Apparently the validation is not that useful. So let me just clear this out and run this again and increase the size of this. Can I? No? Wow. So, okay. Terminal. So, is this better? I hope so. So with Terraform plan, Terraform will read through this config and it will tell me. So it's going to create a new DigitalOcean droplet with a reference of BCBDO. It's going to have these specifications. It's going to so you can see the tags that I created here. It's going to be applying those tags to it. A lot of these are unknown because it doesn't know what the values will be. So once you do Terraform apply, that's where it's going to be created at. Now what I want to do is when I run this, it is going to create a droplet. So let's go ahead and create it. So the good thing is Terraform will still ask me whether if I want to run this or not. So let me make this. So I'm going to say Terraform apply. So when I say apply, by default, it will not proceed and create or destroy the resource unless I explicitly say yes. If you're going to be automating this in your Jenkins or whatever CI you want to use, you can provide a command line flag, I think yes or whatever it is, or accept, which won't ask for this. So, okay, so apply via DigitalOcean token. Okay, I made a mistake here. No? Okay, that is strange. Oh, okay. So you see what's happening here. Even though I have provided an environment variable, I think it is taking this one over. So let's see, remove this. Good. Apply cancelled. Why? So yeah, if you provide this minus auto approve, it will not ask me for approvals. Unable to authenticate you. But why? Okay, let me see. Let me just figure this out by blanking the screen for a bit. I swear this worked yesterday. Demos never work, huh? Okay, the thing is fine. Okay, I found the problem. I am actually providing the var as a value. So let's get to the problem. So you can see here minus var do token equals this. So I'm actually this get string is it takes string, but it's not necessary to provide it. The problem was with this. So I had given like this. So it was taking it literally that value. It did not do the interpolation. So now when I do this, it will interpolate var.do token and it will replace it with the value that I've given here. Stupid mistake, but yeah, shit happens, right? But there you go. So it's going to be creating, and it's going to be polling every 10-30 seconds. And yeah, you can see it's still creating. Depending on your cloud provider, it can take anywhere from, I don't know, 30 seconds to a couple of minutes. Let's see how long it takes. In the background, if you look at DigitalOcean droplets, you can see The new one is getting created. Apparently the provider is not item ported. Interesting. I'm gonna destroy this. Yeah, that's what, right? My VM is provisioning, especially if you're going to be working on AWS RDS, which takes like 15-20 minutes to provision. So we have our droplet ready. We have the tags. So you can see here, creation complete, apply resources completed. Now you can enhance this output by adding an output block. So what this will do is it will let you, of course there's no output, these are the values that are referenced. So this is where a good editor really helps. So what I'm doing is I am saying for this output I want to show the value, rather I want to show the ID, the name, the region, and the IP of the droplets that I just created. Terraform doesn't show it out of the box, so what I'm doing is I'm going to add this extra output block, and it's going to let it show. I don't know how it works for multiple outputs, but let's see, let's figure this out. So now what I'm saying this is Terraform doesn't know to what output, especially if you have multiple resources here, you don't know which one it's referring to. So in that case, what you do is you do this, you refer to the created resources using this naming convention, which is the resource type dot resource name dot attribute. So these are the attributes that are there. Okay, so the name is this. Sorry, the ID is this. This is the name. Since the LSP does not support this provider, you don't see any exported attributes. Otherwise, if your ID supports it, it is going to show you all the listings that are there. So name, region. I mean, we all know this, what the actual values are, but in this case at least. But if you're going to be, so what you can do is you can take the output of the plan and then have it run elsewhere. So the reason for this is a mainly security. So because creating of the plan requires a lot of API calls, so what you can, and also for idempotent, so you can take the output of the plan file and say that whatever was planned should be exactly match what I want. So in that case, having outputs helps, or if you have, say, email notifications or Slack notifications. Regions and IP4 address. So let's see what happens. IP4 V4. Terraform. I'm gonna format it, and there you go. So if you have the format added as part of your pre-commit hook, it sort of nicely aligns it all for you. So you don't have to sit and argue about, you know, whether it's tabs or spaces or four spaces or one tab or 8 spaces or whatnot. It just makes it nicely clean and nice for you. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an extra tag. So what happens in this case? Let's see what will happen when we say plan. Okay then. Output value is required. Okay, looks like I messed up. Does this work? Let's see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it simple. I'm just going to keep this. I'm going to have to look at some of my production stuff to see where. Give me a moment. I'll figure out this. Oh, crimes. Just give me a second, I'm getting a call. So I have found the secret answer. Let's see if this works. Where did I put it? Ah, damn it. There you go. Why? Oh yes, because of we need to get a better terminal emulator. So you can see here I added this extra tag. So you can see Terraform tells me what is going to happen. It says there's going to be an in-place update, and in this case, a extra tag of Nginx will be added. Okay. So again, Nightbot, how? So what we'll also do is, since we removed some of the stuff, this is what we'll do. Namne. Ah, interesting. Good to know. If you can take different variables, you can actually try that now, but let's see. It's all about experimentation, right? I don't think this is going to work out as well, but let's see. Actually, it does work. Hey, what do you know? The listing works, but it's come as IPv4 address. And I think there's ways that you can make it easier to format. I won't bother too much with this, uh, but yeah, it works. So now, for fun's sake, we're going to destroy. Why? Uh, be well, we've already spent an hour doing Terraform itself. Wow. I thought that will take a lot less shorter. Terraform destroy. Yes. So this is about as simple as it gets to tear down a cluster or uh, a droplet or whatever it is. Yeah, simple. No need to go click, click, click. So the reason why I destroyed it is because I want to do something a little bit more advanced. Now, when you're creating, does feel like a god indeed. So when you're creating a droplet, you can also provide SSH keys. Instead of, if you don't provide an SSH key, what DigitalOcean does is it generates uh, a random root password for you, and you can use it to log in for the first time, and then you need to change the password again. So in that, instead of this, let's try with the SSH key. I don't know how this works, to be honest. There's an example, I hope. Oh, interesting. Let's try this. So SSH key not found. Outside. ID, RSA, DO, BCD. Ugh. 2020. That's good. No passphrase for now. Really? Ah. I hope this won't barf out now. What? Don't tell me it's not accepting the RSA. I'm just gonna I guess it does not expand because, well, tilde is actually a shell thing, not really an SSH keygen thing. But well, anyway, it's ready. So let's use and create the new public key now. So simple. And with a little bit of modifications. So once again, a lot of these are very badly hard-coded here. So this is not usually what you would do. In Terraform also supports secret providers. For example, you can plug in Vault here and you can look up the value on Vault. See, let's go back to the providers that are there. So it supports Vault, console, whatnot, yada yada, blah blah. So these are all the things that you can. So you can technically have a secret in Vault, and you can fetch it from Vault. So you don't have to hardcode the secret here. But we are keeping things simple and straightforward. There's an HTTP provider as well, so you can probably make an HTTP call and get something. Very secure. /s, of course. Anyway, so we're gonna create a new DigitalOcean SSH key called CBDO, and we're gonna pass it into this. Now let's see. Validate what format. I really like the auto format thing, so makes it things very clean. Plan. You have an extra dot after the public key. Yeah, I removed it. Thanks. Yep. Let's see what happens. So you can see here a new SSH key will be created. The new droplet will be created, and you can see here the SSH keys will be provided. So if you look back to our previous thing, the SSH key was not here. So there was no attribute called SSH keys. Yeah, I can run it on save, but let's not get into customizing our IDs for now, because that's a rabbit hole which we can keep digging in and over again. Anyway, yeah, so now we are providing the SSH key. Apply, not a app guy. So let us create the resource. So it creates SSH key first, and then it creates the droplet. So pretty good stuff. You can see the other one was destroyed and the new one is coming up, and it's got all that we need. Any questions so far? Getting and understanding this things fine? Am I going too slow? Am I going too fast? All good? Okay. So we have our new IP. Oh, now what? I need to get that SSH. Yes. I needed to do that because this is a new VM that I just installed, and I installed OpenSSH server, but I did not start the SSH agent. So the SSH agent will have all the SSH keys that we've created. So you can do, I don't know what's the default user, but let's see. These escape sequences mean. So yeah, that is our new DigitalOcean Droplet. So you can see the IP address here is the same, right? Yep. Happy coding indeed. So 139.54.79.204, and yeah, we're connected to the same one, and all good. So now let's get to the more difficult part, which is Ansible. Before we get to Ansible, I just have to remind you of a couple of things. The default should be interesting. It's funny that you mention it. On AWS, if you try to log in with root, it will kick you out saying please use Ubuntu instead of root. I guess on here to make things easy, they've kept it root itself. Let's see what happens if you try to log in with Ubuntu. Yeah. So this is not really that much of a problem because usually for most of the production workloads, what people do is you can, even DigitalOcean supports this, you can create a custom image. So you can take DigitalOcean's, that's where Packer comes into the picture. You can take a standard out of the box generic image and you can build layers and layers upon it. So in our case, you can add whatever you want, Docker, Chef, Puppet, Ansible, whatever it is. Which also brings to this interesting question. I don't know if Ansible will work without it installed on the target server, but we'll see. Let's experiment. Before I move from Terraform to Ansible, it's some important gotchas you should know about Terraform. Terraform is a stateful service, and the state unfortunately is maintained in this file called terraform.tf state. Now there are ways of maintaining remote state. So if you just do terraform remote state, you can save it elsewhere, not on this local. The reason why I say save it elsewhere, the most obvious thing that comes to your head is, hey, why not let me just put it in my Git repo. That works fine till you have a resource which requires the use of a secret. For example, if you're providing a password here, then the Terraform TF state will also have the password saved in plain text. So that's why you don't recommend you saving the state locally. Uh, so the way you save states is called backend. There are different backends that are supported. I think you have S3, you have console. I don't know what else is supported. Let's see. Getting into backend becomes a lot more complicated, so I'm not going to run through this for now. Backend types. Backend. So these are the standard backends that are supported. You have Artifactory, Azure RM, Console, etcd, HTTPS. Wow. OSS. I have no idea what this is. PGS in Postgre. Yeah, Postgres. Oh, Postgres is supported as a backend. You have S3, whatever it is. I would recommend using any one of these instead of having the Terraform TF state, because if you don't save this and if you lose this, then Terraform has no idea what to do with it. So for example, now what I'm going to do is, just for funsies, Terraform TF state. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add, I'm showing you what happens if Terraform, you probably change something in Terraform. Let's say add WordPress, and you do Terraform plan. So you can see, because it has absolutely no idea about what to do with it, it's just going to create a new resource. Now this to me is one of my biggest pain points with Terraform, because if you lose the state file, you're pretty much dead. It is just going to create a new droplet, a new resource. If you do Terraform delete, I don't know what's going to happen. I guess it's just not going to do anything. But we had some nightmares because I didn't check out the proper backend, and I had this interesting thing happen. So for my production workload, what I do is I have a dedicated backend for stage and for production. The stage and the backend, the stage and production buckets each have their own specific ACL. So a stage resource can't talk to the production resource. And I was saved because of that, because I didn't check out the right backend and I said Terraform modify, and I was modifying an RDS, and usually RDS modifications are not in place. It was just going to bring down something and bring up a new thing, and I was like this close to deleting a production RDS instance again. Yeah, I was saved by the bucket policies that I had, but also I had set up termination protection on the RDS as well. So that was, we have another safety net, but just in case. Remember, if you're absolutely positive you're not going to save any secrets, then having a TF state checked in to Git is fine. But also remember that once you have multiple, yeah, so that's where I'm coming to. So if you have multiple people working on Terraform TF state, or rather if you have multiple people working on the same different types of resources, uh, there are ways of doing it. You can have different backends per resource. There's what is known as locking, which you saw here. Basically, when with a remote backend and locking, what happens is the state gets saved, say for example in this Postgre file, and that row is locked. So if someone else tries to modify it, you'll get an error saying that this is already in use by this person, so you can't update it. So you won't have conflicting changes. Uh, and that's again one of the reasons why I find Terraform really painful to use, especially when you have multiple accounts and like a lot of different resources and a lot of different people. It works for a lot of people. It takes a lot of setting up, and once you have set up and once you have working, it works fine. But uh, take it as you may. So that's about on Terraform. So now we shall do Ansible, and this is where I start covering more and more because I really don't have a lot of knowledge about Ansible as much as I do about Terraform. But hey, let's experiment. And before I do, yeah, so I've restored our state. Things are fine. I'm not going to commit this. But I, makes me happy that I can actually know how to do this without having to look up. Configure Git, that is. We don't need Ansible in this folder. Git status. Cool. We're done with that. So let's move. You'll get used to it. You'll get there sooner or later. So let's get to Ansible. Now, Ansible, like I said, is the Swiss Army knife of automation. It can do a lot of different things. Mainly, we use it, I guess, for building up, for provisioning, for configuration management. There are some concepts about Ansible. Let's see what Ansible documentation has to say about it. Let's see. So if you use Ansible, or if you've read a lot of Ansible, or if you looked up some of the Ansible documentation or some tutorials, you'll find these common uh, these terms, that is playbooks. Playbooks is basically a unit of how do I put this? So yeah, it's like it's a playbook is a collection of a list of tasks. So for example, if you say that you have a playbook for BCB, it can contain multiple subtasks. What are tasks? Tasks are basically the basic units of Ansible's work job. So you can then have modules. Modules are Ansible's reusable piece of code. Managed nodes and control nodes. You won't see these being used too often, but it's basically managed node is the node where Ansible will be running, rather the node where Ansible will be run to configure something, and control node is where you're running Ansible from. So let's close this, close this. So let's start with Ansible.yaml. Now I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to refer to this repo that I used long back for. So this is a fairly decent repo, I guess. I need to update it with a little bit, but it's got all the essentials that you would want to if you want to start building and learning on the DevOps workflow. So you have Packer for building the custom images. Now this is tailored for AWS. You have Ansible for provisioning and configuring your node. You have Terraform for building the required resources like the instances or whatnot. Then you have a Jenkins file which does this all automatically. So because I'm not very familiar with Ansible, I'm going to do and I'm going to cheat like this. So the way Ansible works is it picks up a single host or a collection of hosts. Thanks, Jevin, for that posting that link there. So the way Ansible works is that it picks up a host or a collection of hosts known as inventory. So if you hear the term inventory, it basically means the targets where Ansible is going to work on, or targets on which the Ansible is going to work on. Now, this is ideally not the best way to use inventory, because I hard-coded an IP, and in the cloud world, the IP changes very rapidly. So there is a way around it. It's called dynamic inventory. Basically, you can tell Ansible, run this custom script and get a list of all the inventory that you want to target. But that's going to be a little bit complicated, so I'm not going to focus on that. We're going to keep things simple. I hope. So let me refer to something else. This is a bit more complicated than expected. So what I am going to say is basically when I say Ansible playbook, which is a command that you use to run Ansible, so I'm going to say on this host, let's import a role called BCB and run it. Now you might be wondering, where is this BCB role? So we'll build up on that. So that should be my bad. It should be a directory. So once again, to keep things simple, I'm going to stuff everything into one single file. So it's a very bad thing to do. So let's not do it. Yes. So what I have is, let me, no, oh, come on. So this is tree structure that I have. Basically what I do is I say Ansible run main, which will import this role called BCB. Now under this BCB role, we have multiple tasks. In the interest of keeping things simple, I'll just have one task and it will do everything. Tree should definitely come pre-installed along with Vim and Git and all that other things. But yeah, unfortunately, we have to live with this. Excuse me. So we're going to be installing everything in this main.yaml. I know it's ugly, but let's just keep things simple for now. Later on, we can split it apart and make it more modular. So I hate YAML. I can never get the format right. Yeah, just give me a second. I have my laptop here, so I'm using that as a reference for some of the EU Ansible code that I've previously written. JSON comments. You know how we have JSON. You know how we use JSON comments. Yeah, basically we create a key called comments and use that as a comment, because a lot of our stuff, so we use Chef, and a lot of Chef stuff is all in JSON, which obviously doesn't support comments, so we have to do things like that just as a documentation and paperwork. So each task has a name which you can refer to, which tells, which sort of gives you feedback about what's happening. So let's see, what do you want to do? Let's look at some of the Ansible modules that we have. Let's start with apt-get update. This called become. Become basically lets you elevate. By default, it becomes does a sudo to the root user. If you don't provide it, if you don't provide the user explicitly, then it it becomes a root user. Otherwise, you can provide what user it should become. Since we are already logging in as root, we don't need this. Let's see, apt. So yes, this is the basic simple. Yes, this is your basic simple Ansible task that we have. This refers to the apt module. So we're not writing any custom code. We are actually just reusing the Ansible apt module. So we're going to say apt, and we're going to say update cache as yes. Let's see if this works. I hope so. Main.yaml. Let me see what the command is. Ansible playbook. Main.yaml, seriously. Okay. Just rename this to setup BCB. Okay. Interesting. Provided host is empty, only localhost is available. No inventory was parsed. Okay. This is okay, I know what I mean. So if I do this, you can see -i. -i provides a comma separated host list. Okay. Let's write that then. And that's my virtual machine. -i inventory files deprecated. Why is it detect working? This one, what does it say? It's fetching the oh man, it's trying to fetch the file, the IP address as a file. Okay, why is that? It says -i inventory file, comma separated host list. Should not. this work? Yeah, that works. Weird. Okay, so failed to access. This is expected because we have a custom SSH key, and by default we have to provide the SSH key like this. Private key file. Actually, you know what? There is an Ansible config file, right? Yes, there is. So let's use the Ansible config file and set up some parameters. Yes, example config file is available here. Paste. So, Ansible hosts. We shall disable this because otherwise this will be a pain. Call out. Remote user is root. Private key file is so what I'm doing now is, because Ansible does not know how to connect to the droplet because we have set up a custom SSH key. So what we are saying is use root as a remote user because it is you set up for root. Use this as a private key file to connect to the SSH, connect via SSH to the remote instance, and let's see, it should be good for now. In all of our, so my other team uses Ansible and they have SSH minus v. So basically Ansible has the verbosity level defined by VV by one V as in verbose, so it's 1V, 2V, 3V, 4V. So it's basically says, yeah. So actually we don't know what happened here. It said okay and changed, but it doesn't say. So let's add minus V. Cache updated, true. So this is what happened. Cache updated is true. So basically we're good to go now because we have Ansible set up. It can talk to the remote instance and things are apparently working because there's no failure. So we're all set now. Let's proceed. So let's go back to our goals. What do we want? We want to install Nginx, PHP FPM, WordPress, Node Exporter, MISC stuff, Tmux, Gim, Git. So let's start with the basics, which is installation of this. So basically whatever you provide is as the name is what comes here. You can see here. So it's sort of good way to follow on what to follow progress. Install lim. I'm just going to keep it install required softwares. Software or softwares? Yeah, I guess as good as mine. I should really install the Ansible plugin, I think. Oh, Jesus. Just going and playing with this. So if you're going to be working on something and if you're using VS Code, it's probably a good idea to go to the plugins or extensions menu and search for something that you're working on. There's a very high chance that there's some extension which will help you a long way. So let's see what happens with this now. There you go. That's it. Seriously. Fail. Anyway, so much for being helpful, huh? Well. So we want to install a list of packages. So package. We want Vim. No, not VMware. Tmax. Keys. Nginx. HP FPM. Let's see what happens. I'm going to bump up the verbosity a bit just so that we get some feedback, because after all this is development. Yeah, MySQL. The problem is I don't want MySQL 8. See if 5.7 if this works. And there are a whole bunch of let's see. What in all this rather WordPress need. That's it. No, it definitely needs. I don't know if there is an. There was. It's last 2018. Yeah, I guess not, because there's a lot of the queries in WordPress is basically just raw SQL files, I think. It is possible. It is not recommended. Oh, what do you know? Well, you have your answer, but let's just stick to MySQL and keep it simple for now. I know WordPress requires some extra PHP extensions, but yeah. Okay, so for now, let's just live with this and try this one and see what happens. So you can see what happens in the extra verbosity mode. No package matching MySQL is available. Really? It should be MySQL Server, I think. Yeah, it should be MySQL Server. So yeah, this is another way of installing. Basically, or rather, this is another way of using Ansible via looping. So you can just say package this. This is references this single item here. It gets a bit confusing, so we're going to keep it simple and explicit for now. But you can add looping. You can pass it as an extra parameter. So you want to keep your Ansible playbooks and tasks very generic, and provide some extra parameters for making it as flexible or customizable as you want. That's how you can do it. But let's just stick to this for now. Maybe I should comment this out because it's doing so many apt-get updates. We don't really need that much. Version. MySQL files version. Let's see what versions are available. Actually, what am I doing? I need it. From 39, 59, 79. Oh, my bad. I see what I'm doing wrong. So only MySQL Server 8 is available, so we're gonna have to live with 8. I do have a database dump from 5.7, and we can plug in that, but I think it's going to be a bit complicated, at least for this stream anyway, and we're about coming closer to our mark. We can do it later. Can definitely set it up for later. Maybe you can set it up for the next week's stream if you want. I can show you how I did it for the stream, but yeah, it's definitely possible. And you sit and wait with your twiddly thumbs. If you bump up the verbosity, you'll see what's actually happening on the server there. Wonder what's happening. Shouldn't be taking this long, right? Now I know why in my in my service there it's all minus v. Oof. Okay, now we know why. Emitting matrix, seriously? Emitting double array? What the hell happened here? Oh. Following additional packages will be installed. Yeah. It did seems like it did install it, but yeah. Definitely. Now I'm looking at my preview screen here and definitely looks like we're in the matrix with all the hashtags. Why is it installing all of this? Nginx stuff. Anyway, so we basically have Nginx installed. Okay, and changed. So let's see. There you go. Well, so success. We have installed Vim, premise, get, Nginx, PHP, FPM. Did we install PHP, FPM? Apparently not. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so we have PHP FPM. PHP FPM 7.3. So yeah, very good. So from our goals, we have, oopsie, sorry. We have Nginx, we have PHP FPM, we have WordPress, we don't yet have Node exporter. Let's do a Node exporter. This is going to be fun. So what is Node exporter? Node exporter is basically a Prometheus exporter. Prometheus is a monitoring tool which is all hip and hype right now, and it's pretty cool actually. So what Node exporter does is it reads all the system status, it reads the machine status, and it exports it in a text format. So for example, I have what is known as the WMI exporter, which is the Windows equivalent of the Node exporter. Let's see. Yeah, and I have Prometheus on my Windows system running, which is, yeah. So yeah, this is the equivalent of the Node exporter. So this is how the exporter stats are like. It's all in text. So yes, it does. So the node exporter will export all the metrics into this slash metrics endpoint, and it will expose this on this custom port. You can change the port by default. Every exporter has their own port. So these metrics are then ingested by Prometheus, which is here. You can see I have this. So this is Prometheus monitoring Prometheus inception there, and this is Prometheus monitoring this. So Prometheus ingests them, and then you can also do cool things like graph them. But the Prometheus, so let's see, logical professors, how much is it? So you can see I have a 12 core system, so it says 12 cores. So Prometheus will ingest it and it will show this, and then you have Grafana. Sorry. You have Grafana, which will formatted very nicely. So these are the metrics from my system. You can see the uptime is only 7 days because I just installed it 7 days back, and I usually don't shut down my system. I put it to sleep so it counts as going on. So you can see here, these are some of the metrics which are exposed. So what I can do on Prometheus is I can let Prometheus, once I install the node exporter, I can let Prometheus scrape that endpoint and we can get node metrics. So the reason why I installed, I said node exporter as one of our tasks is that because the node exporter is not available, at least to my knowledge, I think, as a pre-packaged binary in your package manager. So we have to do some custom Ansible magic. It's also actually available as a Docker this thing, so we can run it as Docker. There's a community supported repo, but that's only for RHEL, CentOS, Fedora. So we can build it from source. We can download a pre-built binary from GitHub, or we can use Docker. For something like node exporter, which exports the node metrics, it doesn't really make sense to run it as in a Docker container. So, and anyway, we don't need to package a lot of or do a lot of custom compilation stuff. It's just basically one binary. So let's just grab it from the releases. Sure. We're gonna pick up Linux, AMD 64. Either two. Oh, sorry, AMD 64 is what we want. Huh. Let's get back to Ansible modules. We don't want apt. Let's see what other module indexes are there. Net tools. No, not these. Huh. So theoretically we can use get URL. The problem with get URL is that it does not follow the link. So it's it does not follow the redirect. The reason I'm saying this is because I have written last week an Ansible playbook for installing a bunch of node exporters and CAdvisor. The thing is, the GitHub. So let me actually show it to you what happens. So I have curl installed. Yeah. So if I do curl minus I and this, oops. So you'll see curl actually says 302 found, and it sends a redirect to Amazon S3 because GitHub assets are on S3. But it doesn't follow it by default unless you explicitly add the -L for this thing. So the same is the case with Ansible's get URL, and I know this because I ran into the same problem last time. So instead of that, what I'm going to do is I am going to say install node exporter, but oh come on, I expected better from you. So I'm going to run a custom command. So now giving you an example of how you can run our modules. Let me just see what happens in my system. Oh, shell it is. So execute shell commands on target. So this is what we want. We want shell you want to download node exporter. Oh, interesting. Shell curl -l is the command which the -l flag will follow the redirects and like this. I don't know what that thing is, but okay. Oh no, not this one either. That is the wrong thing. There you go. So this will install the node exporter. This will download the node exporter, and what we will say is where the task and running. So you want to change the directory as well. So what we will say is args change dir to just give me a second. So we shall run install it to node exporter. This is work. What I'm saying is output it. Let's see what message. No. Yeah. So it will run, output it, and save it to a file called nodeexporter.tar.tgz. And yes, so I'm pretty sure this is going to fail right now because this directory does not exist. But let's see what happens, because all for experimentation. Ansible playbooks. I think VV is enough for now. unable to, yeah, so that's because the directory does not exist. And so what we will do is, we want to make the curl output silent data. We can do that. There's something wrong with that, but I think for now this is fine. So since we want to create a directory, we have to use a module. Well, you can use shell itself. You can just put a mkdir and curl. But the thing with Ansible or Chef is try to use as little shell or bash scripts as possible and try to make use of the modules as much as possible. The reason is because most of the modules are built with idempotency. So if you run the same thing again, it's not going to rerun through it. But if you do it with shell, it's going to run it because it doesn't know how to handle idempotency. So let's try to use file modules. It took me a while to figure out how to create a module, to create a directory, because you have to use file module, and it says manage file and file properties, and somewhere here it says create directory, which is, yeah, you can see the status directory, which is so confusing and absurd. It's like, why can't you just say, at least have it out and open? It's like, actually, you know what, we don't even need this because we will create this later. So we'll just keep this, but we'll still create a node exporter directory because we want to export. We have to we want to extract it to that. So file state as a directory. Obviously this is wrong because we have to give the path to where it has to be created to. So path node exporter status directory. So we're going to create a directory in tilde node exporter. Yeah, let's see what happens. Is there anything else that we should be looking at? Follow some links. No, we don't want to worry about that. Recursively apply attributes for directory contents. We don't have to recurse because it's just one level, but if you want to recurse in and say, I guess it's the equivalent of make dr minus p. So let's see what happens now. So you can see the directory was created. And why does it fail? Bad, illegal format. What? Curl minus. Why? It started the direct download, but then it failed. Okay, let's just try without Let's try with just like this, Tuesday like this. Okay. Now it's working. Weird stuff. It just bumped everything into this. Ouch, 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 ouch. Yeah. And yeah, because we are saying curl minus L, it just dumps everything to std out. So let's try this again. Let's see what happens again. So if you see the ones in green, it means it didn't do it. So because it already existed, so there's nothing to be done. And this is causing a problem again. Okay, so let's see. I think it's because of the tilde that is coming in. Let's see. Yep. Oh, it's minus small o, not capital O. Stack Overflow Zindabad, huh? Let's see. No. Oh, man, crap. I did a boo-boo. Wait. Why is this coming now? Things that happen. Okay, surf code. Did I change it? Oh yeah, I did. And still failing. Why? Root is a directory. Okay. So in that case, we shall add try again. I wonder how much bandwidth is wasted because of misconfigured commands like this. Like we downloaded the root exporter, the node exporter from S3 like 5-6 times at least. Makes you wonder. Imagine that you have a CI which borked and something happened, and then you go for say the Christmas weekend or the Christmas week out, and all through the week it's been downloading over and over again. Jeez, it's a lot of wasted time, huh? Wasted bandwidth, wasted money. Anyway, so now you can see it's downloaded to node exporter.tar.gz. So, woohoo, very good. Let's just confirm anyway. Yes, of course, because I killed my session. Ah, eval. So yes, we do have the node exporter multiple times. Yeah, that's fine. We do have it. So very good. We have downloaded node exporter. So now next is let's try to install this off. Downloaded it. Rather, let's extract it. Looking at my notes, it says that again I'm using shell, but for what I can't remember. Let's see. Oh yeah, I think because unzip was not working on my Mac or something like that. Modules. Let's go to all the modules. Module index. There's a win underscore unzip, but I don't see an unzip. It should be there somewhere. My biggest problem is trying to find out which module to use, but it's not there. Why? Is it there in file modules? Yeah, unarchive. Jeez. Unarchive unpacks an archive. It will not unpack a compressed file that does not contain an archive. Okay. There is no tar module, it's just an archive. Harsha, your questions are coming to my personal whisper instead of in the chat box. I think you should post in the chat box instead. But Harsha was saying it is recommended to use get URL instead of curl. That's true, but get URL does not support following redirects to my knowledge the last time when I checked. And it would just stop at the first 302 that it gets. It doesn't follow the 302 to the final destination. So that's why I ended up using shell curl. Okay, so unarchive. Let's unarchive. The source is, of course, node export. I know these are all hard coded, but once again, we're doing this to make it things clean and simple. There are ways that you can avoid all this hard coding. You can use loops, you can use variables, you can pass in parameters. Let's see. Yeah, because that's what I don't recall. Last time I think it was failing. It expects. I think it works with BSD tar, not new tar or something of that. But let's see. Let's figure it out. Source destination is node exporter. So, for example, if you want to make it completely modular, for the playbook that I have for my work, I install Node Exporter, C Advisor. What else? Yeah, just these two, and it's all. Let me just give an example of how it is. It's like this. File. Path. Directory. So this is how basically you would have it more generic and modular instead of hard coding everything. So basically what you're saying is this, so what I'm creating here, it's exact same thing that I'm creating here, right? But here I have the hard coded path, but here I have a very generic path. So it should be like, so what Ansible will do is when it sees this, it will go through each item of this, in this loop, it will fetch through each item. It will fetch, item is a Ansible keyword, so it's going to refer to the loop, and it's going to pick up this key called exporter, in which case this exporter gets substituted with node exporter, C advisor, black box exporter, whatever it is. So the same way you can, what we've done here, the same way we can use with loop as well. So instead of package, we can just say package and this. So plus you can extend this further with environment variables or import it from some other file. That other external file can be auto-generated, things like that. But just give an example of what we can do. with Ansible. But for this case, we'll just keep it like this. Node exporter, destination of node exporter. Okay, so what else? We have this extra ops. So this lets us provide some extra options. The reason that I'm going to add this is again from my experience. So now we have downloaded this node exporter file, but it also contains the version information. We don't really want the version information to be created as part of the extracted archive. So just I'm gonna say extra options minus strip components. This is actually coming from tar, so I don't know. Let's see if this works or not. So I am so let's run through this again. Test presence of the archive. Yeah, we can do it, but again, giving it things clean and simple. Anyway, if the archive is not there, the unarchive is going to blow up and say error, so it's not going to run through. We can definitely add more resilience to it. We can add, but the goal is just to keep it simple right now. I could not find. Okay, so now I know why I did not go for an archive. It is trying to find source of this. Why is that? What is source? It should be remote source. So what an archive does is it will try to copy the file from my local system to the remote target. So we shall make this as remote source as yes. Let's close this. Come on, work. Failed to find. Oh. So yeah, it tried using unzip, not found, tar or not arc. Okay, so let's try installing unzip then. So yeah. Let's see what happens now. Unzip could not handle the task archive. Yeah, so now I know why I did not go for an archive. So instead of this, we go back to shell. xf move this. Why? I'll show you in a bit. tarxf this minus extra options, I think. Strip components. So let's see actually what this strip components does. Strip number of leading components from file names and extraction. So one is basically what you have that. So it skips the first part of the component. Rather, it skips the first part of the file from the archive actually. So instead of the whole, instead of creating the new directory, it should just create it in there. So let's see. Shall so we want it to run in the node exporter directory. Otherwise, it will just create it in the home directory itself. We want to put the node exporter file in the node exporter directory, right? So, yeah. xz is for compressing. So we want to uncompress it. We want to extract it. V is verbose. We don't really care because we know it's only going to be one file. No, actually. What does Z do? So you can see minus Z is filtered through gzip. If you skip it, it will. If you skip it, it's going to detect it automatically anyway. So you don't have to provide it. So if you do xf, it will extract it. If you do xf, it is going to extract it, but it will do heuristic detection and extract it. So you don't, it's a tar.gz. So if it is a bzip, for example, the minus z won't work. You'll have to provide minus z or rather minus j. So instead of that, if you just keep it as tar xf, it will let tar automatically figure out what sort of archive it is. Change directory may not work. You might want to send minus c instead. It actually does work because I've tried it. But let's try it out anyway because we're all for experimenting. Liquid software. Create node exporter directory. It's done. Speed up means speed up. I meant everything before extract. Hey, and looks like it worked. Let's see. Yep, there you go. So we have node exporter created and exported unarchived to the node exporter this thing. Of course, now our task is not yet over because we need to run it. And if you try to run it now, you'll see that it won't work because it does not have the required permission. Oh, it does have the required permissions. I could have sworn it did not have the right permissions. But anyway. If you do want to change it so that in case you download some file which does not have a permissions, all you can do is you can use the file module again, provide the path. In this case, will be in the path node exporter, and let's see. We say mode as u plus x. We want the current user to read it, to update it, and sorry, we want the current user to be able to execute it. So that's why u plus x. Ansible being Ansible, it should not do anything. So we should have this as a safeguard anyway. Make exporter execute. Did I get that right? Yes. And this is the next thing is also something which I find really cool about Ansible is, again, this is about the magic. So once we have extracted it and made, once we have extracted the archive file, we don't really need it anymore, right? So what we do is with the file module, we'll say state as absent. So what that will do is it will remove it. No, not absent. I thought I got it as absent. Let me check. Yes, it is absent. Yeah, see. Let's get this down. Because I know you said comment it out, and it is very tempting to comment it out. I found it a lot of times where I comment something and something which was working fine just the last step, and then I uncomment it, and then it just blows up, and you have to start digging up try to find out why it's not working anymore. So instead of that, it doesn't matter if it takes a bit longer. It's just easier to just get it, have it running all the time. So you can see the state absent is passed. So what does it mean here? You can see no more node exporter archive file. So that's how you clean up stuff. Super cool, right? I find it really nice. The next final thing is to let node exporter run. So in this case, we will be using the shell again. Ideally, you would want to install something like node exporter as a service. rm-rf path colon root and state colon absent. We can actually do it here and then rebuild the whole thing all over again. But anyway, rm-rf won't work. So anyway, like I was saying, ideally the node exporter must be set up to run something like a system service, or system D unit, or that's the whole init service. But for now, we're just going to keep it plain and simple. So we're going to use the shell and run this. We want to run it system D unit for the win, yeah. But we will use nohop. What nohop will do is it will run it in the background so that the node exporter doesn't terminate. And we node exporter, that's, and ampersand. So the no up will give the no hang up sign and it will put it to the background, right? Right. So I don't need to change the directory, and yeah. So now the interesting thing is, I was telling you about commenting in the existing stuff. Yeah, because you had mentioned comment out all the prior stuff. Now, uh, what will happen is, now let's say that I had an accident, and instead of putting the tar.gz, I just put node exporter, and then I commented the entire thing. And what I wanted to do was test out this node exporter run. This would fail because in this I accidentally deleted the file, and you would be like wondering, why is it not working? Everything is working fine. It's installing everything. So that's one of the other reasons why I'm like, just to prevent me from doing some mistakes, let the whole thing run all over again. So yeah, let's run this. Let's see if this will work. Running this will try to run 2 instances of node exporter. Yes, it should. I'm going to try experimenting with it. Actually, when it tries to run for the second time, it will see that the port is already bound, so it won't run it again. It will fail running. But your Ansible playthrough will fail. So that's the other reason why I don't like running shell scripts or embedding shell scripts directly into the tasks. But yeah. So you can see the node exporter started running. It's a big mess of a job, but still. Let's see if it should be. There you go. We are running the node exporter on our. So there you have it. We have our goals, which is we used Terraform to provision and spin up a new BCB droplet. We use Ansible to install Nginx, PHP, FPM. We didn't install WordPress. For WordPress install, what we need to do is do something similar, which is basically use get URL and download the archive and then extract it. So I did node exporter instead, because for WordPress I need to do the whole setup process and I just skipped it. We installed Vim, Tmux, Git, and few others. We didn't install our configs, but it's fairly late as we've been doing the stream for 2 hours 40 minutes now, so we can skip it. But you can provide templates and then you can pass variables to these templates, and Ansible will populate this the template with the variables that you provide, and it will create a new file. So it's quite similar to how we did, say, the file using the file module. I give an example with the looping, and it's sort of similar, but if required, we can do that at a later stream. If you have any questions, we can keep the stream open for like for another 5 minutes or so. And how far into this project are you? We just started the project, to be honest. And we have actually mostly completed it, but we had some goals, which is we needed to have a VM provision with Terraform, and we needed to install some software. We achieved both the goals. We used Terraform. So you can see the Terraform code is here. It's fairly simple. Then we use Ansible to provision it. You can extend this project to do whatever it is you want to do. So if you have any ideas, suggestions, comments, just drop it. I can take it up in the next stream that I'm doing. It's probably the same time next week. In the meantime, I'm going to try doing some Prometheus stuff on my local system. Ssh SD. No. Come on. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to add this is just extra bonus content. Playing with scissors. Yeah, today was the first time I actually played with the DigitalOcean provider. I tried it. I tried it a bit yesterday, but today was the first time I actually properly use it on Livestream here. So, and I've used it with a fair bit with AWS. I can say that at least their documentation is fairly good, and you can use it to copy paste it and then tailor it to your needs. Anyway, so like I was saying, I have this Prometheus config. What I'm going to do is I'm going to point Prometheus to the node exporter that I have set up here somewhere. Come on, where did that go? 139. There, that's the IP that we're talking about. So ideally, now Prometheus should be able to scrape that target, and let's see. Because I changed the config, I have to restart it. Now that we have Prometheus restarted, so you can see the BCB node is coming up. Yay! Which means our node exporter is working as expected, and I did it right in front of you. Targets. So yeah, this is coming up. So let's see how it looks in Grafana. Let's see. Grafana dashboards. I've used this dashboard before and it is very nice, very flashy. So I'm going to import it. So node exporter, Prometheus data sources, the current Prometheus one. So yeah, this is basically the stats of our. You can see we just created it. So actually Prometheus on Windows also runs as a standard executable, so I had to use NSSM to install it as a service so that I can restart it whenever I want. So it's a pretty nifty tool. So I have Prometheus and Grafana set up and installed. Coming back to this, you can see we have all of these metrics. It says last 2 days, so let's change to last 30 minutes and you'll see a lot more information. Because this is when so some of the metrics are available only after we install the node exporter, but others, for example, the system uptime, they come from the Linux kernel itself, the memory, for example. So yeah, so our node export is working fine as expected. So yeah, that's about it for today's stream. If you have any suggestions, any ideas, anything else that you would like to see, drop in a comment. I'd be happy to take up any new things. If you have any questions, let me know. Ooh, all these shiny keys screens. I'm happy to help in any way. So In case you're, let me share some links to the chat. Ooh, Inception. So anyway, don't forget. So these are my websites. I'll have some posts every now and then. If you're interested in my latest blog post, which is on how I set up my Windows PC and my new desktop, don't forget to check it out. And yeah, if you have any questions, drop me a message. I'm Satyabhat on Twitter, or you can just drop by the stream. I'll probably make this as a weekly stream, so sort of get into a rhythm. I enjoy doing this. So sure, if you're streaming it, let me know. I can drop by and help you with any questions or any problems that you might be having. So thank you so much. Have a good day, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are. Bye bye.